Respected dignitaries, distinguished members and guests, I thank each and every one of you for being here. I'm very delighted and pleased to welcome you all to this webinar, Understanding Emotional Intelligence. Emotions aren't always what they seem. Human beings are complex with an array of emotions that can be hard to read. For example, someone displaying angry emotions could, in fact, be masking a great sadness. Emotional intelligence is having the ability to read these emotions and understand where they arise from. Studies have shown that people with high emotional intelligence have greater mental health, job performance, and leadership skills. In today's webinar, we will look at what EI, that is emotional intelligence, mean. We shall discuss its importance in our professional and personal life. Our speaker shall explore the skills needed to reach high level of EI and the benefits of EI. I take this opportunity to introduce our keynote speaker, HASAN. He did his master's in management from London Business School, London University. Did his MBA, Faculty of Management from Delhi University. He is the alumni of Aligarh Muslim University. He completed Sloan Fellowship Program from London Business School and Program for Management Development from Harvard Business School. He worked in Saudi Arabia with the Unilever JV partners for 39 years and held executive positions of VP, SVP, EVP, and CCO. He worked in India for 7 years with blue chip companies like DCM, Voltas, and Hindustan Lever. He is actively involved in community organizations. He is the member of higher board at International Indian School System, Saudi Arabia. He is the chairman, managing committee, Indian International School, Jeddah. He is the member managing committee at Indian International School. He is the vice president at Saudi Indian Business Network. Over to HASAN GHIAS Saab. The screen is yours. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome everybody, and thank you, Wasim Amin Saab, for the introduction. I hope sincerely that this talk will be of enough benefit to most of you to justify the use of your time. Now, as Wasim Saab said, the topic today is understanding emotional intelligence. Now, for a very long time, intelligence was understood as cognitive intelligence. The intellectual ability to reason, analyze, to remember. But now it is well understood that emotional intelligence is not the only form of intelligence. Cognitive intelligence is not the only form of intelligence. There are other forms of intelligence, such as artistic intelligence. Now, artistic intelligence is not cognitive intelligence, but it is truly a form of intelligence, or musical intelligence. That is another form of intelligence. Or spatial intelligence, as used by town planners, architects, imaginative use of space. That is yet another form of intelligence. But the most important of these other forms of intelligences, other than cognitive intelligence, is really emotional intelligence. And here, a psychologist in the United States, Daniel Goleman, did some truly path-breaking work, which led to the publication of his very influential book in 1995 titled Emotional Intelligence. And Goldman's research brought out the great importance of emotional intelligence. His theory discounts IQ as the sole measure of one's abilities. The Harvard Business Review called emotional intelligence a revolutionary paradigm-shattering idea. Basically, Goldman grouped capabilities into three types. The purely technical skills, such as accounting, such as engineering, such as advertising. The second group was cognitive abilities involving reasoning, analytical reasoning. And the third were competencies demonstrating emotional intelligence, such as the ability to work with others and effectiveness in leading change. Now, Goldman's research in a large number of organizations where intellect, he recognized that intellect was a key driver of performance, and therefore cognitive intelligence is not to be belittled. But his research came to the conclusion, large-scale research, that emotional intelligence was twice as important as purely technical skills or cognitive intelligence as a key driver of long-term performance. Now, here I would like to discuss a little bit about these three groups of capabilities that Goldman talked about. At the beginning of your career, it is really your technical skills that are important. You're recruited for your competency in your technical skills, whatever they be accounting, or they be marketing, or HR, or engineering. That's why you're recruited, that's why you're taken in. And so at the entry level and at lower levels of management, it is your technical capabilities that are the key drivers of performance. As you rise up the organization ladder, everybody at that higher level, which is now middle to senior levels of management, everybody at that level possesses those functional technical skills. Otherwise, you wouldn't be there at that level. What then becomes important are cognitive skills. This is about cognitive intelligence. This is about reasoning, analysis, planning, big picture thinking, long-term vision. They become the key drivers of performance. But when you rise to the senior most levels, to the top levels of the organization, everybody who is there at that level has demonstrated capabilities in the technical skills, functional skills, and cognitive skills. Otherwise, he wouldn't be there. Here, the key differentiator, really, and the difference between success and failure is emotional intelligence. And therefore, as in your professional life, as you go up the ladder, emotional intelligence becomes a key differentiator and becomes very, very important when it is at the highest levels of the organization, because at that level, the differentiators no longer are technical skills and cognitive intelligence. Everybody there has it. What differentiates you is really truly emotional intelligence. And the importance of emotional intelligence is pervasive, because it's not just in your professional life. It's in your family life, it's in your social life, it's across the board. And therefore, understanding emotional intelligence becomes very critical and very important. Now, in Goldman's framework, he basically grouped these competencies, emotional intelligence competencies, into two broad groups. self-management skills, and relational skills. And that is what we are going to go through during the course of this talk. In self-management skills, he has self-awareness, self-regulation, and motivation. Under relational skills, he put down empathy and social skills. Now let's look at self-awareness to begin with, because that is really the beginning of emotional understanding, emotional intelligence. And people who have a deep understanding of one's emotions, strengths, weaknesses, they understand where they're coming from, what they're about, what their needs are, what their drives are, what motivates them, what frustrates them. And they're able to recognize their feelings, they're able to recognize the feelings of others. So self-awareness is really the foundation of authenticity, and it is the starting point in one's development. Self-awareness is what connects you to your inner compass and helps you discern your passions and discover your purpose in life. Now here, I will dwell a little bit upon strengths and weaknesses first. Your strengths are generally very obvious to you. They develop early in life, and you're fairly conscious of your areas of your strength. But what is not so obvious is the need to align your strengths with your purpose in life and with your profession and with your pursuits. So what often happens is that you have strengths in one area, but you choose pursuits or profession in another area, which is not your area of strength. For instance, if your strength is communication, you would do well in customer-facing roles. You would do well in broadcast journalism. You would do well in sales. But your skills in communication are not going to help you very much if you are in operations research or in scientific research, because they're a different set of competencies, a different set of strengths are of importance, not necessarily your communication skills. Similarly, take creativity. Now, if you're a creative person, you could do very well in advertising, for instance, which needs a lot of creativity. But if you choose, if creativity is your strength and you choose accounting as a career, then that's not going to help very much, because you are guided by the generally accepted accounting principles, and creativity in accounting can actually land you into trouble. So it is important that you recognize your strengths and you align your career goals and options along with those strengths. Now, of course, very often you find that you don't have a choice. That's the job you get, that's the only job you're getting, that's the job you take. But consciousness and awareness of your strengths will help you to do better in your professional lives, because you're playing to your strengths. You're building a resonance between your strengths and your purpose. In counseling, because many a young person suffers throughout his or her life because he or she did not receive the right counseling at the right time in terms of career choices. And so understanding your strengths and aligning them with your purpose is of critical importance. And this is really the beginning of emotional intelligence. Now, when it comes to weaknesses, that's a lot more difficult to understand than your strengths. If I tell you to if you have to look at other people's weaknesses, it's very easy to rattle off and very easily say that this person is weak in this, this, and this. But if you were to turn the same caustic searchlight that you throw so readily on others, if you turn it inwards, you will find it hard to, because there's so many blind spots, you find it hard to really understand your weaknesses, to accept your weaknesses, to come to terms with your weaknesses. And here, in practical terms, this becomes a problem for young people and for others as well, if they have to face interview situations. Because the question that is often asked, directly or indirectly, is about your weaknesses. And here most people, A, because of lack of awareness of weaknesses, but more importantly, because they don't want to admit their weaknesses, because they feel that if they tell their weaknesses, they will not get the job. So they come up with benign kind of weaknesses, like I'm very impatient, etc. But here, if you shift the conversation from weaknesses to areas for improvement, and then you say that I view my limitations, now you're switching the semantics. I view my limitations not as weaknesses, but as areas for improvement, and I'm very conscious about my limitations, and I'm very conscious about the need to improve upon them. Now you can say that, okay, I mean, what's the difference? It's only semantics, weakness or limitations. But I think it's much more than mere semantics. Words carry meanings, and these meanings can be nuanced. So while weakness has a negative connotation, limitation does not have the same negative connotation. It is well recognized that everybody has limitations. And when you combine it with the assertion that you are aware of your limitations and that you're consciously trying to improve upon your limitations, then you are on firmer ground, and you are able to discuss your limitations more frankly than you're able to discuss your weaknesses. And this, of course, this is not about interviews that I'm talking about today, but I think many people, when they start thinking of weaknesses and limitations, would be much more open about them. Now, to be able to really understand your weaknesses even more than your strengths, what you need is support groups. You need feedback loops. You need people you trust, people who have your welfare genuinely at heart, who will give you honest feedback. Now, generally, people don't give you feedback because they know that it may annoy you and it may affect the relationship with you. So even your closest friends will hesitate to give you honest feedback. But honest feedback is very important to be able to see yourself as others see you. We all may think that we are God's gift to mankind, but others may not think that we are God's gift to mankind. So it's very important to see yourself as others see you, and the only way that you will see yourself as others see you is if you get some others to give you honest feedback about how they view you, how they see you, what they think are your weaknesses, your limitations, and then when you hear about it, you don't go into denial, because very often what happens is that we tend to get into a denial mode. Oh, no, that's not the way I am. That's not really truly accurately describing myself. So if you get into denial, then you shut yourself off. And then the person who gives you the feedback won't give you feedback anymore, because you're not taking that feedback. And therefore, this feedback helps you take the blinders off, to face reality, to see yourself as others perceive you. And this is, again, a very important understanding as far as your emotional intelligence is concerned, your self-awareness. And the more sensitive you are to what's within you, both in terms of strengths and weaknesses, the better position you will be to take on the world as it is. The other important part of your self-awareness are your values. What do I stand for? What am I? What are my values? And today, if you look around you, you see a crisis of values. You see a genuine degradation of the value system. For many, and very many, values are like willows. They bend whichever way the wind blows. The wind blows this way, then this way, the wind blows the other way, then another way. But then there are examples where people have lived and died by their values. Mahatma Gandhi is a prime example. Martin Luther King is another prime example. And then there are others, like Nelson Mandela, who lived in prison for 27 years in a very brutal regime, but refused to compromise on his values. So we see both types, very few who live by the values, very many who are very ready to compromise on the values. And we don't have to go as far back as Mahatma Gandhi or Martin Luther King. There are more recent examples of people who have lived by their values. Now take the instance of Narayan Murthy, the founder of Infosys. He's a prime example of building a business based upon values and using Infosys as a platform to translate his values into practice. And I'll quote from what he said. He said, a dream was to demonstrate that you can run a business in India without corruption and create wealth legally and ethically. What drains our energy or enthusiasm is not the fiscal problems, but violating your value system. So this is what he believed in, and he delivered upon that belief. Azim Premji is another shining example of a person who's lived by his values. But in the same corporate world, you are aware of very many who have just severely compromised on the values. But these people may gain in the short run, but they do not earn the respect and the recognition that those who have values do. Now, when you are forced to make trade-offs between your values under difficult circumstances, that's when the real test of your values comes in. You might say that, okay, I know that it is wrong, but then the situation demands that I make a little bit of compromise on my values. And so I'm not giving up on my values, but I'm making a little bit of a compromise on my values. Now, one little compromise leads to another compromise. And then from small compromises, you go on to bigger compromises. And then you find that your values are really in tatters. So it is also very important to navigate through very difficult circumstances, very treacherous circumstances, and see that you're able to retain your values. You're guided by your moral compass. You remain a person of character, integrity, and you remain true to your values. And it is very important to establish the boundaries, your moral and ethical boundaries. I'll go this far, but no further. And that then puts you in territory which you will not allow to be encroached upon by others, and you're able to hold on to your values under very difficult circumstances. And we know, particularly the situation in India, how difficult it is to retain your values, to live by your values, when all around you, you're seeing a complete collapse and crisis of values. That then brings me to your goals. It is also part of your self-awareness, to know what your goals are, your immediate goals, your short-term goals, your long-term goals. So really, it is your self-awareness that lays the foundations of your emotional intelligence. And the more aware you are consciously of yourself, the more emotionally intelligent you will become. And also, so self-awareness becomes very, very important. Introspection is critically important. Then the next point in this system of understanding emotional intelligence is really self-regulation. Now, of course, self-regulation is about discipline in life, time management, etc. But there is also a higher level of self-regulation, which is really emotional self-regulation. It is about impulsive or reflexive behavior versus reflective behavior. You will find many a time that a certain stimulus happens and you react impulsively. And later when you think about it, you think that, oh my God, that was really not the way I ought to have responded. But I did it. But I know that that was wrong and I will not do it again. But then you find that the same impulse happens again, the same impulse confronts you again, and you respond exactly the same way. In spite of the fact that you recognize that that was a wrong response, but you respond the same way. And that is because habits have formed. There are channels in your brain along with responses flow to stimuli. And if you have to change those channels, you have to work very hard at it. You have to break old habits. You have to develop new habits to change those responses in your reflexive behavior. Now we can see that there are people who, we can see the contrast, for instance, very obvious contrast was in the US, Barack Obama versus Donald Trump. Barack Obama, the way he would respond to questions would be reflective. He would pause, think, even though for a short period of time, and then respond. Donald Trump would shoot from the hip. So it is important to develop this capacity to respond reflectively rather than respond reflexively to the impulses that confront you. And this, again, means establishing new channels in your brain. It doesn't come easy. It means breaking old habits, building new habits. And that is, again, a very important part. Self-regulation is a very important part of your emotional intelligence. That brings me to motivation, understanding motivation. That is really your values that impact upon your emotions to spur action. And this spurring of action is motivation. So you can see that, again, your motivation is rooted in your values. Your values are impacting upon your emotions that are motivating you to act. And here you have to be conscious of certain action inhibitors and certain action motivators. For instance, inertia is an action inhibitor. So you're lying in bed, you feel you're warm and cozy, and you have something to do, or you have things to do, but you don't want to get out of bed. You want to stay in bed. And so that's inertia. That inhibits you to act. To act. It's an action inhibitor. Or apathy. You know that somebody's suffering, but you say, what do I care? I'm not suffering. So you're apathetic to that person's condition, and you don't act to do anything about it. Or fear. You fear that if you do something, if you act, it may act against you. And you do not act because you fear the consequences, which could be dire, which could harm you. Another action inhibitor is isolation. You feel alone, you feel isolated, you don't feel others are with you. So you do not want to act because you think that you are alone. Nobody else is in solidarity with you. Or self-doubt. You doubt yourself. Can I really make a difference? Can I really do it? Am I up to it? And that becomes an action inhibitor. As opposed to action inhibitors, there are action motivators. There is the sense of urgency. You're in bed, there's a fire in a corner of the house, you don't stay in bed, you jump out and try to do something about it. A matter is urgent, you need to act. Or even anger. You're angry, somebody says something, you want to hit him. That may not be the right thing to do, but anger motivates you to act. Then there can be hope. You have hope that you will have a great career, you'll do well in your profession, you have hope that you will do well in life. And hope becomes a motivator for action. Solidarity, you're part of a group, and you do things because of solidarity. My group is doing great work in this field or the other field. I want to be part of the group, and that solidarity with the group becomes your action motivator. Then what is called YC mad. YC mad is you can make a difference. And so if you believe that you can make a difference, and so you act because you think you can make a difference, and that becomes an action motivator. Now, many people believe that money is a major motivator, making money, but the main motivators for making money are not necessarily economic. Money is a proxy for self-worth and achievement. There are many people who have already made lots of money for themselves, even for the progeny, but they still continue to make money. There are people like Warren Buffett, there are people like Bill Gates, Azim Premji, who give away a lot of the money that they made, but that doesn't stop them from making more money. And that is because money is seen not as a motivator in itself, but as a measure of your self-worth and your achievement. So the components of motivation are really a passion to work for reasons that go beyond money or status, and a propensity to pursue goals with energy and persistence. And how do you recognize motivation? What are the hallmarks of motivation? It's a strong drive to achieve. It's optimism even in the face of adversity or failure. It is organizational commitment to the goals of an organization or a group. Now, here I want to introduce some very good work done by David McClellan. He's no more. He was a Harvard professor and an expert in human motivation. And he wrote an article in the Harvard Business Review in January 2003, which was titled "Power is the Great Motivator." And David McClellan, he classified motivation into three types: power motivation, achievement motivation, and affiliation motivation. Now, these deserve to be discussed at some length. Now, power is a double-edged sword. When used without discipline and restraint and scruples, it can cause great harm. When used with restraint, with responsibility, it can work towards great benefit. So, and you see both examples. You see examples of leaders who use power as a means of self-aggrandizement, and we see a lot of examples of those who demand loyalty from others and who use their power to damage others. There are many who need to use their power to pulverize your ego. They think that by destroying your ego and making you feel small, they feel big. And that they can be great destroyers. And when such people leave, a lot of disorganization follows. But then there are positive uses of power, because after all, power is authority. And if you have to get things done, you need the authority. If you're accountable, you're responsible for getting something done, you need the authority to be able to do that. And for that authority is really power. So if you use power with restraint, with inhibition, and for the right purposes, then power can produce a great deal of benefit for people. As I said, that if God gives you power, may He also give you the wisdom to use it with restraint. And we are seeing examples around us where power is being used in a very damaging way, because it is being misused. And a lot of harm is being done in the exercise of power. Whereas, on the other hand, a lot of good can come from the responsible use of power and authority. The other motivation that he talked about was achievement motivation. Now, this achievement motivation is about personal achievement. It is about what you achieve as an individual. You put your own achievement and recognition first. Now, these are people, those who are motivated by achievement motivation, are people who can make great researchers, for instance, or great professors or lawyers, because they are motivated by individual achievement. But then people who have high achievement motivation, they're motivated by individual achievement. They don't necessarily make great managers, because for them it is not about team achievement. It is about individual achievement. And therefore, in an organization setting, what you really need is power motivation and achievement motivation, the right balance of it to produce the right organization results. Because achievement motivation alone can produce great results for the individual, but not great results for the organization. And the third type of motivation that he spoke about, David McClellan, was affiliation motivation. This is about the need to be liked more than the need to get things done. These people want to stay on good terms with everybody. They'll make exceptions to accommodate needs. Now, people who have just high affiliation motivation don't necessarily make good managers because they lack in power motivation, achievement motivation. Also, to them, it is more about affiliation. It is more about making people happy, being on good terms with everybody. That is the dominant motivation. Now, it is a balance of these motivations, which you have to, a balance that you have to derive yourself, that leads to success. And here I want to introduce a tension that you often see in the workplace, which is between task orientation and people orientation. If you are very task oriented and say, come hell or high water, this job has to be done, the task has to be achieved, I don't care how, then the people suffer. You have low people orientation. If you have very high people orientation and say, look, I have to take care of the people, I don't care if the task suffers, but the people can't suffer, then you have very high people orientation. Now, again, in the organization setting, you have to strike a balance. You have to strike a balance between the need to get the task done and the need to take the people with you. And you have to find your own balance. If you are too harsh in terms of task orientation, then in the short run you might succeed, but in the long run, morale suffers, and then people are not with you, they are not motivated. And eventually, by neglecting the people orientation, you don't achieve the tasks. So again, it is a balance of these people orientation and task orientation. Now, the three motivations that we talked about, which was power motivation, achievement motivation, and affiliation motivation, there are three psychological needs that drive these motivations. There is the need to get things done and the need to be competent that drives power motivation. I need to get things done, so I need power, I need authority to get these things done. Then there is achievement motivation, which is about autonomy. I don't want anybody looking over my shoulder. I want to be autonomous. I want to work independently. I want to be my own person. And that drives achievement motivation. And then the third psychological need is relatedness, which drives affiliation motivation. I need to relate. I need to be part of a team. I need to relate with people. I need to make people happy, to make people happy with me. And then that is what drives affiliation motivation. Now, here I think we come to the end of the self-management skills, and I'll talk a bit about relational skills. Empathy. This is something which is very, very important. It is about the ability to see things from someone else's perspective. It is the ability to understand the emotional makeup of other people. It is the skill in treating people according to their emotional reactions. And here, the hallmarks of empathy are expertise in building and retaining talent, cross-cultural sensitivity, gender sensitivity. Now, we need to talk a little bit about cross-cultural sensitivity and gender sensitivity. Cross-cultural sensitivity is very important. Even in the Indian context, you find that there is such a large variation in culture and beliefs and customs that in the workplace and in your social environment, you have to have a high degree of cross-cultural sensitivity. What may be acceptable behavior, let's say in the Punjab, may be abrasive and offensive in, let's say, West Bengal or Kerala. When it comes to the global workplace, and many workplaces are global, cross-cultural sensitivity becomes even more important. It is because various people from very diverse cultures, they are coming together to work together, and they're very different cultural styles, very different cultural traditions are at play in the same space and time. And therefore, cross-cultural sensitivity becomes very important. As you can see that the Americans are very direct in their approach and will say things a way which may not be very palatable to other cultures. The British would say it differently and mean it differently. The Japanese would again have a very, very distinct culture. And even when they hand you a business card, they will show it with both the hands and they'll bow to you. So that's again another very different culture. So when it comes to the workplace, a diverse multinational workplace, or even a multicultural workplace, as in India, cultural sensitivity becomes extremely important. So also gender sensitivity. Now, workplaces have been very male-dominated domains. And increasingly, we find that women are coming into the workplace, whether it is in business, industry, or it is in academia, or it is in healthcare. Everywhere, there are more and more women in the workplace. And these workplaces have been very male-dominated. Now, nuances, norms of behavior have to adapt to the presence of to a gender diverse workplace. I have seen this happen in Saudi Arabia, where for a very long time women were not allowed to work. And then women started coming in the workplace, and you could see the difficulty that men were having in accepting women colleagues, and that women were having in shedding inhibitions in being able to interact in the workplace with men. So gender sensitivity too is very important. And empathy is particularly important as a component of leadership for at least three reasons. Increasingly, work is being done in teams, and for teams to succeed, there has to be a great deal of empathy within the team. The rapid pace of globalization means that diverse cultures are coming together to achieve the same purpose and goals, and therefore empathy becomes very important. And then a growing need to retain talent, because there's a great competition for talent around the world. And if you have to be able to retain talent, then you have to have a high degree of empathy. Now, here I might mention a survey that was quite recent, in fact, done by Professor Jamil Zaki, a professor of psychology at Stanford University. And he wrote this article in the Harvard Business Review of May 2019. He surveyed 150 CEOs, and 80% of them recognized empathy as the key to success because it leads to stronger collaboration, it reduces stress, and it increases morale. Now, in terms of empathy, one has to understand that there are two levels of empathy. One is cognitive empathy, and the other is emotional empathy. Cognitive empathy is understanding another person's point of view, understanding where the other person is coming from. Emotional empathy is a higher order empathy, where you're not only understanding what the person's point of view is, but you understand the feelings behind that point of view. You understand the feelings behind what the person is doing or saying. And often you find that it is emotional empathy that is very hard to cultivate. It is, for instance, communication of information. It is not just what is being communicated that's important. It is also how it is being communicated that is important. It is important to be able to hear the message beneath the words being spoken. Somebody is saying something, but what is the hidden meaning? What is the meaning that's underlying what he's saying? So these are, it is really emotional empathy that becomes very important. For instance, somebody says something that offends you. Now, is it the content of what he said that offends you? Or is it the way he said it that offends you? Or is it his perceived rude behavior? For instance, you walk into a room, somebody has got his legs up on the table, and he doesn't take his legs off, but he's saying something which is perfectly reasonable, perfectly good, but still you are annoyed because you feel that, not taking his legs off means that he is showing disrespect towards you, and that leads to annoyance. Now, annoyance is something which you have to be very careful about, because when you are annoyed, then both cognitive empathy and emotional empathy both shut down. So your annoyance takes over, and then you're no longer empathetic, either at a cognitive level or at an emotional level. So it is really very, very important, because empathy is deep emotional intelligence, and it's very important to understand how other people feel, why they behave the way they behave, understanding their point of view, and interpreting their point of view, and understanding the feelings behind that point of view. And then I know that we are coming towards the end of the time allotted to me, so I will then come to social skills, which is the last element in that framework, in Goldman's framework. And the components of social skills is proficiency in managing relationships and building networks, and the ability to find common ground, common interests, and build rapport. The hallmarks of social skills is persuasiveness, its expertise in building and leading teams, its effectiveness in leading change. Now, social skills are the laboratory where your emotional intelligence gets tested, because this is the culmination of your self-awareness, your self-regulation, your motivation, and empathy that plays through your social skills. And so this is the ultimate test. Your social skills are the ultimate test of your emotional intelligence. Nothing important gets done alone. You have to have people to work along with you, and therefore your social skills are important. And to be able to implement an agenda, you need a network. You may have an agenda, which may be a brilliant agenda, but if you do not have a network to implement your agenda will never get implemented. And therefore, networking skills become very important. And one of the big advantages of COVID has been that thanks to Zoom, it has allowed networking that was not possible before. So people from different countries, different time zones can come together, people who you may not ever have met in your life, but for COVID, have come together and are forming teams together and undertaking purposes and tasks together. Now, a network, you have to understand the dimensions of your network, the breadth of your network and the depth of your network. Now, there may be networks which, for instance, between classmates, between close friends, which have a lot of depth, but don't have width because they are limited to small groups who understand each other very well, who know each other very well, who interact frequently with each other, but who are a small group. So it's a closed network and it's a dense network. Then you have open architecture networks where, like MEDN, for instance, where a lot of people have come together. There is not much depth in that network, but there's a lot of width in that network. And in terms of your networking, again, you need both types of networks. You need dense networks and you need open architecture networks. And you need the skill to be able to work your agenda through your networks. Finally, to conclude, the question is emotional intelligence nature or nurture? It doesn't come naturally, does it have to be developed? It is both nature and nurture. It may be coming more naturally to some than it comes to others. But whether it comes to you naturally or not, it has to be nurtured. Without nurturing, you will never develop emotional intelligence, even if you have a propensity to be emotionally intelligent. Emotional intelligence can be learned. It also increases with age, which is good news for the older people like me, because you have so much experience, you've gone through so much. You've learned through your mistakes, your experiences, and therefore older people tend, as a result of the experiences in life, to be more emotionally intelligent. Learning emotional intelligence needs motivation. It needs extended practice and feedback. It doesn't come easy. It needs extended practice. And importantly, it needs feedback. It means breaking old behavioral habits, establishing new ones. And emotional intelligence cannot and will not be built up without sincere desire and persistent effort. So that, I hope, was made sense to you. It's not a lot of it. And that becoming conscious and aware of the importance of emotional intelligence might help guide your actions, your choices, your purpose in a more effective way and make not only your professional life more successful, but also your personal life, your family life, your social life more meaningful. With that, I'll be happy to take questions or comments. And so I'll request, I'll hand it back to Mr. Wasim Amin and ask him to moderate the question and answer session, which can be for up to 30 minutes, I suppose, depending upon how much time you have. Thank you very much.
Yeah. We have few questions in the chat box. One from Salman Ansari. Good evening all. Could you please touch upon imposter syndrome and how to deal with it in your career?
Can you please repeat it? I understood that as imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Okay. So you see, in life, you meet a lot of imposters. Now, these are tricksters who pretend to be what they are not. But then, as they say, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. Imposters do not have a long shelf life in the same environment. They move on from one environment to another environment. So you'll eventually detect the imposters, but here again, it is about your own gullibility and taking things at face value. So the caution to be exercised is that take nothing at face value. Verify, and then only you trust. Don't trust without verifying.
So the second question is from Mohammad Rafiq. Why is it emotional intelligence so-called? Intelligence is something associated with cognitive capabilities. He has a second question. EI is an acquired trait or is it something inbuilt?
Okay, so let me answer the first one first. And as I have said at the beginning of my lecture, that for very long, cognitive intelligence, what is cognitive intelligence? It is about being rational, it is about reasoning, it's about analysis. And for very long, intelligence and your IQ, which is how cognitive intelligence is measured as a number, it was seen to be the only form of intelligence. I mean, when I was a student, nobody understood emotional intelligence at all. So intelligence was supposed to be cognitive intelligence. But more as time went by, people realized that there are other forms of intelligences. And emotional intelligence is not so much about reasoning. It is about feelings. It is about understanding the other person's point of view. It is about understanding feelings of other people. It is about empathy. So you may be highly cognitively intelligent person, and there are many examples of that, but you may completely lack empathy. You're so full of yourself and so full of your brilliance, as they say that when you're so wonderful, it's hard to be humble. So you're so full of yourself, you're so full of your own capabilities that you do not have the empathy to either understand somebody else's point of view or to understand the feelings behind that point of view. And then you may be completely blind to your own faults and feelings. So it is certainly a very different kind of intelligence, which was not appreciated earlier, and which is well appreciated and well recognized now. Now, what is the second question, if I may ask? What was the second part of the question?
EI is an acquired trait or is it that is inbuilt?
So basically, as I said in my concluding remarks, it's both nature and nurture. Some people have a higher natural innate emotional intelligence and some have less. But whether nature or not, nurturing is important. It is something that can be acquired, that it can be learned and developed. So it's both nature and nurture, but it is more nurture than nature.
Thank you. One question from Aisha. What about toxic colleagues and professional competitors?
You see, the two are different. Professional competitors is fair game. It is everybody in the workplace will compete with each other because the organizational workplace is a pyramid, and there are less positions at higher levels than there are people contending for those positions. So professional competition is natural to the workplace. Now, toxicity is not natural to the workplace and need not be in the workplace, but it happens. toxicity happens, and then again, it is important to understand why is a person behaving the way he is behaving. What are the underlying reasons, motivations for that behavior, and how do I make myself immune from such toxicity? So again, here I think emotional intelligence comes into play, because if you understand yourself very well, if you're very clear about your values, if you are empathetic and therefore are able to decipher the reasons for the toxicity, then you're able to better deal with it. But these are facts of life, and unfortunately, in the Indian context, increasing facts of life that one has to deal with. And certainly emotional intelligence helps you come to terms with toxicity. But competition in the workplace is healthy and it's fair, it's natural, and there it is about creating competitive advantage, creating within you sources of competitive advantage that allow you to compete with others and succeed.
Question from Tariq Nafis. How to imbibe emotional empathy in children with extrovert bent of behavior?
Yeah, you see, empathy can be inculcated and should be inculcated in children. Both those who are extroverts and those who are not, who are introverts. It is again, you see, children learn a lot from their parents. If they see the parents genuinely do what they say, there's certain messages that they take from your behavior. Now, caring for other people, sharing with others, that helps develop empathy at an early stage. Now, they may not be so conscious of their strengths and weaknesses. You may be very conscious of them. And you have to work even without telling them that, look, I am working to develop your strengths or to ameliorate your weaknesses. But children take a lot of cues from your own behavior. And by being kind and sympathetic to them and to others and teaching them how to share with others will hopefully help to develop emotional feelings and human feelings, and ultimately a higher sense of emotional intelligence in those children. Some children, I mean, there's a very interesting marshmallow study that where marshmallows were put to certain children, and they were told that you can have one marshmallow now, or you can wait 10 minutes and then you have two marshmallows. And the children who immediately grabbed the marshmallows were, separated out from those who waited the 10 minutes to get two marshmallows. And they were tracked over a number of years of their lives. And it was found that the ones who waited for the second marshmallow did a lot better than the ones who grabbed that marshmallow. Now here it is about reflexive behavior and reflective behavior. The ones who grabbed the marshmallow were acting reflexively on an impulse, and the ones who waited to get two marshmallows were the ones who were acting reflectively. So it's very interesting when you look at the behavior of children. It's very interesting to observe the children and to see how they behave, and to be able to guide that behavior, to nurture that behavior. And very importantly, to build the values. The value system really you acquire from home. Values start early in life. So that is the time when you start inculcating values in your children, which is all part of the emotional makeup and emotional intelligence.
Yeah, one question from Salma Muhammad. How can we improve our emotional intelligence? Do we need to read books, or do we need to coach to help us do that? Or can we help ourselves?
I think all three. You can read more about it, and all the good books that are written after a lot of research, a lot of thinking goes behind them. So reading good books is certainly, and Daniel Goleman's own book, Emotional Intelligence, which was in 1995, and since then a lot of more literature has been produced, would be helpful. And then coach could also help if you wish to engage a coach. But ultimately, you have to do it yourself. You can learn all the theory, but if you do not put it to practice, then it'll not work. And it needs practice. So you can get the theory from books, you can get help in practice with the coach, but the onus is upon you to keep trying. And as I had said in my lecture, that impulsive behavior is very hard, very, very hard to change, your impulsive responses, and how to make the reflex actions change through better reflection. That is a huge challenge that people find that it's very, very difficult to manage and to overcome.
Yeah. Thank you, Hasan GHIAS Saab. Now, first of all, at the outset, I thank Noor Mohammad Khalid Saab for recommending Hasan GHIAS Saab to take up this topic. As we all know, Hasan GHIAS Saab is an intellectual giant, and we are all lucky to have him with us today. He very well managed to navigate across different aspects of emotional intelligence, and I truly enjoyed it. I thank all participants for joining us and making this webinar a grand success. Finally, thank you, Hasan GHIAS Saab, for accepting our invitation and providing your valuable insights on AI. Thank you, one and all. Jazakallah khair.
Thank you, Wasim Saab. It was a pleasure for me to say what I did. I hope that was found useful to some degree, and at least will set some of you on the path of appreciating the requirement, the need, the importance of emotional intelligence better than before. But I'm humbled by this experience, and it gives me great pleasure to see that I might have made some small difference in some people's lives. And thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Hasan sir. Let me end the session with your permission.
Yes, please.